lessons of Shema on the tongue on the young Rama the yamchi good dog yarucha night talker come never rosin bushiang she's a kagera she's a shikumang some nerva she panule the my water anaya in your home oh ikaya au nu la da you want some doesn't know matter la tang xia ni nam nei mer du long chang hi
Professor Dr. Gilvan Oliveira is an associate professor at the Federal University of Santa Catarina and head of the UNESCO Chair in Language Policies for Multilingualism, based at UFSC, which involves 31 universities in 16 countries. He was the director of the Institute for Research and Development in Language Policy in Florianópolis, Brazil, and executive director of the International Institute of the Portuguese Language of the Community of the Portuguese Language Countries in Cape Verde, developing projects such as the Common Orthographic Vocabulary of Portuguese, associated with the 1990 Portuguese Orthographic Agreement and the Portuguese as a Foreign Language Teacher Portal. His publications focus on language policies, particularly multilingualism and minority languages, and the social history of languages. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Gilvan Oliveira to address his keynote speech.
I would like to begin with a word, the word Kelkai. Kelkai is a word of the Quechua language. The Quechua language was and is a very important language spoken by around 6 million people in Peru, Bolivia. It was the main language of the Inca Empire before the arrival of Spaniards. And this word it's said to have been to draw or to make signs. The conquistadores recognized the meaning and changed the meaning and began to use the word for writing in alphabetic sense. If we jump from Peru to Mexico, much more to the north, we find this kind of book. This book has 39 pages. It is 11 meters long, and it describes divinatory rituals that mobilize hundreds of people at once. So, a small book, but a very important orality background that distribute roles, dances, singing, and other cultural activities and organize all these groups that are participating in the rituals. From drawing to writing, the verbal story only serves as a metaphor for deeper changes. Just as an old meaning was obscured by a new meaning, Indian, it means indigenous oral culture, was also obscured by the use of European writings. Their diverse expression and memory techniques are now banished from public consciousness. The situation of those who cannot write is now generally understood as one of analphabetismo or illiteracy. So millions of people are illiterate because of the technology of writing and because of the techniques of colonialism on the other side. That's why we brought the words of our friend and colleague Lucila Otavalo, writer from Ecuador, poet in Quechua and Spanish, that mention how oral literature has a secondary place, a secondary role in dominant culture. Also the abundant creative and sensitive imagination that has allowed the physical and cultural survival of these collectivities for so many centuries and today. We discussed some of these topics in Manipur in the first version, the first edition of this conference, and the words from Lucila Otavalo were there. She mentioned, of course, the colonial destruction of civilizations like the Inca and Aztecas. Each of them could have become what India represents today in terms of self-understanding and self-management of its cultural and literary values. They cannot, because the indigenous population of Mexico or Peru continues to be in a position where they don't have these possibilities. Centuries of silence and colonial appropriation of knowledge produced in the context of the Latin American continent produced invisibility and appropriation of this knowledge produced in indigenous languages. But we could ask, in contrast to the field of writing, where do you see orality? What is the place of orality and oral knowledge for the disciplines in our society that take care of these questions? Let's take three possibilities: folklore, anthropology, and intangible cultural heritage. Folklore. Folklore, as you know, is an expression of the 19th century romantic nationalism. What was the importance of folklore? Popular culture was a window into the past of a people, contrasting always with erudite culture, with the true artists of the dominant cultures. The idea of documenting cultural practice before it disappeared embedded the idea of the inevitability of its disappearance as an archaism. So folklore was interested in documenting the past, in finding in the past the connections of a people to their roots, to the nobilization of the history of a people through the popular roots of culture.
So we would like to have Mr. Tien Manen to come up on stage and address the audience with some words.
As we all know, we are living in a very, very, very fast-moving time. Digitalized world, the technological world. It's really a very crazy kind of a world. But in the midst of all the craziness, I think it's a very refreshing to know that we are now here to look into what we were, to rediscover of where we started the traditional, the heritage, and also our past life. In fact, as they say, every time an old man dies in a tribal society, which is oral, important part of his history disappears. And as Dr. Galvin has also mentioned that unfortunately, those people who are very familiar, who are very knowledgeable about the past, about our heritage, they have become a very endangered species. And that's precisely what is happening in our Naga society. Naga society is a very small society, unfortunately, but at the same time, it's a very rich diversity society. We believe in unity in diversities, but unfortunately, some of our traditions is being very badly treated. And in fact, it is unless we really rediscover and also renew what we were, I think very soon many of them, like the fauna, flora and fauna, disappearance of flora and fauna, even a tradition can also be really disappear from our society. Well, that reminds me that Dr. Gilvin, that since you are from Brazil, all the way from Brazil, in fact, when we were young, we were told that the Brazil is the lungs of the world because of the very rich kind of rainforest area. I only hope that, I want to convey in the name of the Naga people that to at least save the rainforest area in Brazil and also the indigenous people, that's it, because it is very exciting to say that Indians, the so-called Indians, of course it's been a misnomer why they were called Indians. But then again, they are also becoming endangered kind of a people. So we have really, I think, really concerned about all that.
And now, with great honor, we invite Padma Shri awardee Shri Sentila Younger, not only our festival director, but also a distinguished textile expert and conservationist.
I'd like to thank Professor Dr. Gilvan Muller de Oliveira, who has come all the way from Brazil and delivered the keynote address. Thank you, sir, and your thoughts and your deliberations have truly inspired us. We are honored here to have this evening the Commissioner's Secretary, my very dear friend Atil, and also to Sangeet Natak Academy and the Ministry of Culture, UNESCO. Thank you for the collaborative support. I thank Dr. Dalando Kating, Vice Chancellor, the Northeast Christian University, and Dr. D. Kanadure, Vice Chancellor of St. Joseph's University, for their support and cooperation. And to Kulu Lorin, Managing Director, Tetsu College, who full-heartedly engaged with Intact Nagaland from the day we started the conversation on the listener, along with the principal, staff, volunteers, and everyone who has worked diligently in putting together the Listener Festival. A very big thank you to all of you. Finally, but importantly, I would like to express my thanks to all of you present here for taking time out of your busy schedules to grace the occasion. Your presence has added an extra spark to this event and made it even more special, as I shall look forward to your continued participation in the following days of the Listener Nagaland. I thank you once again.
We are here at the Listener Festival. It is a festival of orality, and this is being held at the Lorin Hall at the Tetso College in Sovima, Chumukadima. And it started today. This is a 3-day festival, and right now we're really privileged to have Dr. Gilvan Muller de Oliveira, who is he's from Brazil, and he has a PhD and the head of the UNESCO chair in language policies for Multilingualism, Federal University of Santa Catarina, Brazil. First of all, thank you so much for speaking to us, sir. We wanted to ask you, what is the similarity that you find between the indigenous people of the Northeast and Brazil, I would say? What is a few similarities?
Yes, very many similarities. And I would say both today are struggling for having new positions, for conquering new possibilities in societies. That is amazing how the artistic path is bringing indigenous people all around the world, and I note specifically here and in Brazil, through music, through drama, through education connected to these dimensions, to a new position in the societies.
Right. So today was the inaugural session. What did you notice about the inaugural? Anything out of the box or unique you found in today's performances of the artist over here?
Well, I was very curious on a specific musical instrument that is very similar to one in Brazil, but the position is the opposite. I mean, the position of the repercussion box of the instrument. I would like very much to research more about the possibility of musicians from Brazil and Nagaland to play together and have musical experiences together.
During your keynote address, you were speaking about the difference between cultural and identity, which was really interesting because a lot of people, especially from the Northeast, having so many tribes, are a little confused between their culture and development and the technology that's coming in. So how can we make sure that the culture remains, but we also go advance ourselves in the modern world?
Culture is always a dynamic dimension. So even if you want to keep a culture frozen, it's impossible because these connections are connections with others, connections with time, connections with the economic dimension. So the main question is how to develop the identity in a way that you can transform this culture in possibilities, in resources for the future, in capacity of reproducing to the next generation what you have learned, what the people have learned, and of course bringing better quality of life, better capacity of control on the resources that you have in your territory, of connecting this knowledge with other knowledges that are disponible around the world.
Now, this is a 3-day festival that we're having here. What is your expectation in the next 2 days, tomorrow and the day after? Do you expect anything? What are your views on Nagas, the oral traditions that we have over here?
I'm very curious about how, for example, people from one ethnicity, Naga ethnicity, reacts to the others, how these interactions happen, how this common sense of diversity, interculturality will happen. And I will be very glad to talk to some people and ask them directly how they feel and how they appreciate all this diversity in that they are one of the elements.
We have here El Somiroy, who is one of the producers of the festival, and he is from the Imasi Foundation. Thank you so much for speaking to us, sir. Can you please tell us a little bit about what exactly is the Listener Festival, and is this one of the first of its kind that's happening, or has it been going on?
Well, for one thing, I think it's the first and only literature festival of oral literature in the world. So it's a pretty, if I may say so, a pioneering, groundbreaking idea of a literature festival that is tailored to and responsive to the appropriateness, what is appropriate as a literature festival for the Northeast.
But do you think we do have a lot of misappropriation when it comes to our designs and our ethnic designs, especially in our textiles and all? Do you think that can happen with literature?
Absolutely. As Picasso said, good artists borrow, great artists steal. Everyone borrows from everyone. It is really the intent and the artistic value of what you produce after what we call the appropriation that is really the defining character of the steal.
How can we preserve the oral literature and heritage? How difficult is it going to be to preserve all of this?
It's very difficult and it's also very easy. But the first step towards preservation is knowledge. Unless we know what we have, unless we know what is of value, how can you preserve? How do you preserve what? How do you decide what to preserve? What is better, this or that? So we have to have a self-knowledge. When we think of a literature festival, we think of inviting people and we show off our product. A great writer, a good book, right? Nice interviews, right? But this time, this is the second edition after the Manipur Festival. It's going to be a rolling festival every year in a different state of Northeast India, right? I began to realize that what it does is it actually holds up a mirror to us. Who are you? What makes you you, right? And I think the most important part of this festival is that it makes us see ourselves. It challenges us to define what is important to us. Once we know what is important to us, then we will know what to preserve. That is the main thing. Otherwise, the act of preservation itself is not difficult. Any kid can take an iPhone and interview his grandfather. Now that is digital technology, right? It's not that difficult.
So festivals like this will definitely help in recognizing what to preserve. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. It makes you think. What is our oral literature? What is our literary heritage? Once you have to program this, then you begin to think this. And then we say Northeast India. So, okay, she's from Sikkim. He's from Assam. So, how do I program this festival? What are the linkages? What makes it a region? What makes it a family of languages, connectivities, the connections, the roots, right? And I think that is what this festival, because of its particularities, its specificities to this region, and its appropriateness and its appropriations from each other, makes this a rewarding experience to organize.
Next, we have here Cintila Younger, who is the festival director, and she's going to be speaking to us about how this came about and what is her expectation in the next 2 days. Today was the inaugural. Let's have a word with her. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, so tell us a little bit about the Listener Festival, the inception of it for Nagaland.
Okay, the listener is a very long process. It took place the conversation started about 7 years ago between, Somi Roy and myself. Somi, as you know, is the Imasi Foundation, and I am the state convener of Intact Nagaland chapter. Intact stands for the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage. And so when this conversation came to the point that we are now today, this is like the second festival in the making. We plan to make it a roving festival, take it around the Northeast states.
Every year?
Yes, every year.
Right.
And well, I'm sure he must have also told you what
Yes,
it
he's
was all
in fact
about.
told us most of it. But ma'am, now coming back as the festival director, is this open to the public, and also how can people come and witness this next 2 days that is going to be there? And then there's a lot of discussions going to happen. Will the public be allowed to be part of these discussions?
A festival, so it is a free festival as the name goes, and of course there's not so much. We want to make it like a very fun thing. Like culture is fun, it's interesting, and it's like a journey back into many aspects of our heritage which we seem to have left behind us. And now we want to recover it, perhaps, and through this festival create the awareness and interest, especially particularly among the young, that there's so much more that you can get out of your heritage. Yeah, and then to be a citizen in this monoculturalism.
Very true, ma'am. Another important question, and lastly, I would also like to ask, before closing this interview, do you think the youth of Nagaland, especially, I'm just going to be talking in context of Nagaland, do you think that the youth is forgetting their roots, their culture, and if so, what can be done apart from festivals like this? What is the other aspects that people should start instilling?
Okay, so a very interesting part of this festival is that we have the Ministry of Culture dovetailing with us, and they have a series of 2 days of capacity building workshop where they have invited the culture departments of all the Northeast states, and this is in a national level capacity building, especially around focusing on the 2003 UNESCO Convention on Safeguarding Intangible Cultural Heritage. And so the way, the world body is also looking at culture is something which is definitely going to affect all of us at some point, because it is now going to become very center stage, I feel. And so that somehow or the other, at one point, we will look back to our past and try and recover. But the thing here is, it shouldn't be later than now, because many of the knowledge keepers, memory keepers are passing on.
So that was the director of the festival, the Listener Festival here at Lorin Hall at the Tetso College in Sovima, Chumukadima. And this festival is a 3-day festival that commenced today, November 2nd, and it is going to go on till November 4th. It's a 3-day event. This is all about preserving and recognizing the oral history, and not just in literature but in music and different languages that we have in this state and the Northeast. This is the second edition. The first was in Manipur, and this is the second. And like the director of the festival said, that they plan to have it every year in different states of the Northeast. Esther here with videographer Moa for Nagaland News Network.